Hi everyone. Welcome to part 3. So I'm Dr. Lena with Pure Pediatrics, and my guest has been Corrie Kristick with the Swim Guru. Website once again is swimgurutx.com. And we are actually outside at the pool, so this explains our attire. And this is actually appropriate swim attire. You should be ready to jump in the pool at any time. And so what we talked about this morning is drowning, swim safety, how to work on kids getting to where they can swim and get safely out of the pool. But today I wanted to focus, or kind of specifically, on actually drowning and some drowning statistics. Because I think when you hear the statistics, it's actually a bit frightening to realize how risky swimming, especially alone, can be. And so apparently, according to the CDC, 1.2 million people worldwide drown. And that's an astounding number. And there's actually, in the United States, 10 people drown every single day. And 2 of those 10, so 1/5, are actually children ages 1 to 4. And you would actually argue that kids aged 1 to 4 probably have no business being swimming in a pool, especially alone. And so some of those kids might have been ones who fell into a pool, who maybe didn't have a safe pool environment at their home. They might have been someone who was actually at a pool party, especially crowded pool parties, because a lot of children actually die within arm's reach of an adult. So one thing I always tell parents is, toddlers make noise, and when they're not making noise, they're usually doing something or getting in trouble, or in the case of a pool, actually drowning. So one big misconception about drowning is everyone thinks that people drowning are waving their arms about and screaming, "Help me, help me." They're not. They're actually incredibly quiet, they're silent, because they're actually focused on keeping their head above water, because they're actually in the process of going underwater. And so drowners are very, very quiet. So if you're at a pool and you have your toddler with you and your toddler's not making noise, you need to look for your toddler. And it's important to always keep all eyes, or at least one set of non-distracted eyes, so meaning not reading your iPhone or flipping through Facebook or any of those things, but one set of dedicated eyes actually looking at your child at all times, because there's obviously nothing more precious than your own children. But I personally have jumped in and rescued other people's children as well. And so, and the parents always are like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." So even, let the plane overhead go. So even kids who know how to swim can drown, and I think that's super, super important to know. And even really good swimmers can drown. And so we're going to touch on a few of those things, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions that if you know how to swim, you're fine. Like, you can go swimming by yourself at pools. I know adults who drowned at some of these health clubs where there's no lifeguards, and either had a seizure or had a shallow water blackout, which we'll talk about, or something happened and they actually drowned. And that probably would not have happened had either lifeguards been present or someone who's a swimmer been present, even if they're a swimmer in the water. And so we're going to touch base on a couple of those things with Corrie. So a few facts about drowning really fast. So as I said, 10 people drown every day in the United States. That's a scary statistic. And you have to remember, like, for every person who drowns, there's like 5 other people who are near drownings. So the number of near drownings is much higher. And the other thing is, drowning implies you died. Okay, so you die from being underwater, and so you're no longer with us. Near drowning doesn't mean that you died, and some of those kids and adults do just fine, but a good majority of them actually have the consequences of being hypoxic and have brain injury, or had heart damage or something else. And so near drowning carries a very significant morbidity, and that's really important to know. So just because we rescue someone from a drowning situation doesn't mean that their long-term outcome is actually very good. So 1/5 of those who drown, of those 10 people, so 2 out of the 10, are actually ages 1 to 4, and that's kind of a scary number, and that's an age group. It is the highest drowning rate in children are ages 1 to 4, and of course one reason is because most 1 to 4-year-olds don't know how to swim at all. And most of those occur in home swimming pools. And it is the second leading cause of death, at least of accidental trauma, behind motor vehicle crashes. So basically car accidents and then drowning. And one thing that I always tell parents as their kids get past like infancy is like pretty much after you're an infant, up until your 20s to almost 30s, the leading cause of death is accident, accident, accident. And so that's where, us, protecting them that way becomes super important, as opposed to them dying of cancer or heart disease or, congenital malformations or something like that. So nearly 80% of drownings are actually, pop quiz, boys or girls, it's actually, so 80% of drownings, you think they're male or female?
I will think they're male.
Male. They are absolutely boys. I will say boys tend to be a little bit more adventurous. I mean, one theory is boys a lot of times, just their personality is that they have no qualms, just jumping right into that pool. Whereas you'll even see it in the office, like girls are a little bit hesitant. They look around and kind of decide what they want to play with. Where boys, I mean, they literally would jump off the roof of your house and not give it a second thought. They just jump right off, and that's how boys are. So other things that people who drown have in common is they usually lack a swimming ability. So I know tons of adults. I'm actually kind of surprised the number of adults I know who say, yeah, I never learned to swim. And part of me is like, since I grew up swimming, not professionally at all, and actually, while I swim, I'm by far not, I'm good enough, but not like a tremendous swimmer. But they never learned. They never learned to float or anything. And so that's a very dangerous situation, is if you never learn to swim as an adult, because then you can't rescue your child either. So by all means, if you never learn to swim, you would recommend adults any age learn to swim.
Any age. If you're nervous, you've got some anxiety around the water, you're not sure how to be around the water or be relaxed in the water, I would definitely have you sign up for lessons or encourage you to get in the water with somebody who's certified and knowledgeable about how to be safe in the water. But any age.
Yeah, and
it's never too late to start, and quite often when you find the instructor that's good for you or someone that you can mesh with, quite often you learn very fast. So really, if you've got those anxieties and fears about water, it's never too late. I work with people who are 70, 80 years old, and they get to being able to be capable in the water and safe. But like Dr. Elena is saying, never go in the water alone, because that is, or without anybody watching or around, because that's sometimes when things can happen when you're older or you're younger. Incidents can happen, and you want to have someone there with you.
Yeah. It's a lifelong sport, and it's good on your joints. So if for no other reason, and I know people who are 80 and 90 who look super young, and they're swimmers. So there you go. Okay, so the other things that people who drown have in common was a lack of barriers. Meaning, if you have a pool, like we have a pool at home, and so if you saw the part of the video, where we actually, had Lexi swimming with Corrie, our pool, we do not have a cover for the pool. We do have a fence that blocks our pool in, and you should always, of course, have a fence. It's probably better if it has a lock. But inside the home, especially when your kids are little, most houses have a deadbolt, and you'd be shocked at how many kids can figure out how to unlock a deadbolt, even with a key, because I know my kids are like Houdini, and I'm like, I don't know how they got the door open, but they got the door open. And so getting a really tall lock, kind of like at hotel rooms and other places, I mean, anything like that, they have things where when the door opens, alarms go off. You really want to be alerted if suddenly your pool area is being occupied by someone you don't think should be there. And so even the second deadbolt that's much higher up, or even with a chair, they couldn't figure it out. These kids are sneaky, and if they want to do something like go play in the water, they will figure out how to do it. And all it takes is you taking a nap and the door being easily accessible, and they will figure out a way to get out. Plus, in the summer heat, it's really not that safe to be outside all day anyway. Lack of close supervision. So this goes back to what I said before, is that a lot of drownings in little kids, sometimes they happen just at crowded pools, or they even happen at pool parties at home, and parents are within an arm's reach. And so the key is that if your toddler or your child's behind you, and you're facing this way, you have no idea what's going on behind you. And I think that we get fooled into this sense of security when they wear those little rings, we have a lot of those, or those little floaties, or the noodle, or the floaties, all those things, thinking, oh, okay, well, they're safe. But it turns out, and you can attest this, their little head can still turn downward, and so you can drown in a floaty. So those are not life-saving at all. The only thing that would probably be approved and safe is an actual life jacket.
Life vest.
Yeah,
Yes,
a life vest.
life vest.
And so those are things that when your kids are little, it's better to actually have that, in my opinion, than just the floaty things. The floaty things are great if you're going to sit there and play with your child and have eyes on them all the time. But even in life jackets, of course, you probably should still have eyes, or you definitely should at all times. And then I'm a huge proponent of, like you said, lifeguards.
Yes.
So location, it turns out younger kids tend to drown where? In the pool at home, or like?
Younger kids can definitely drown in any body of water, but most cases are at home in the pool.
Right. But what's interesting is that older kids, once you're over 15, it's actually natural bodies of water the leading cause, and that's because now these kids are going to rivers, although I don't know why in Texas you want to swim in a river, but people do it. So going in rivers, going to lakes, going boating, sometimes then alcohol becomes involved, boating accidents, and I think the statistics were like at least 80, I think it's even 88%. It's a crazy high number. I think it's 88% of people who have a boating accident who drown were not wearing a life jacket. And so I think that we get lulled into the sense of being really complacent, and because we're on the boat together, no one has a life jacket on. But it turns out if you were in a crash or something and actually hit your head, if you had a life jacket on, your chances of survival are much greater than if you hit your head and blacked out and you end up in the water. Those people just drown.
Right.
And so older kids, natural bodies of water. Younger kids, pool is the leading place they drown. But it's important where you can drown in a bathtub. And the old saying was you can drown in like an inch of water. I mean, if you're an infant. And so it just takes enough to cover your mouth and nose. So failure to use life jackets, huge risk factor, especially on open water kind of areas. Alcohol use, which we're hoping we don't have to deal with the little bitty children in the pool. No. But the parents might be drinking.
Right.
And there you have a problem. So when we talk about someone who's supervising the kids, obviously your lifeguard should not be drinking.
No.
But if the parents are who's supervising, it's kind of like a designated driver. I mean, someone there should obviously not be drinking to excess at all, so that they actually have eyes in the pool. And so that is their job. They can wear a special hat if they want to.
And that's another, very good reason to hire the lifeguards for your pool party. Obviously, they will have the, very certified, legit eyes on the pool. But like Dr. Elena said, parents, should also be watching and continuously watching. So if your kids are in and around the pool, if you're in and around the pool, not getting to a state that, is, beyond what you can sustain for being around water. So you should not be drinking into excess when you are around water.
Call them the designated watcher.
Yeah, designated
So they
watcher.
should probably not be drinking.
Sure.
So seizure disorders. And so some people have known seizure disorders, some people don't. This goes back to the whole idea of even once you know how to swim, or you say you have a teenager who swims, is not letting them swim even in your home pool alone. So my kids, the older ones, love to swim at the pool. They love to be there in the water at all times, especially during the summer because it's so hot out. And my only rule is, that's fine, but you have to have another friend who's over, who's, old enough and who knows how to swim, and so y'all are together. And so it's still, even at home, I don't like people to quote unquote get in the water and swim alone, because if something were to happen, there's just no one to even reach out to call 911 or save you. So to that end, in 911, CPR.
Right.
So it's astounding how many people don't know CPR, and with new parents, I always try to encourage them to learn infant CPR. There are places where you can take classes. Infant CPR, child CPR, because choking is always an issue. And little kids, it's usually a respiratory arrest, which means a drowning or a choking episode or something. Whereas in older people, it's usually cardiac arrest, meaning their heart stops. And so that's a different type of thing. So knowing CPR, but importantly, kind of different ages. And that's where at least having the lifeguards handy. So if you're at a pool party and you're not surrounded by a bunch of doctors, a lot of our pool parties, there's at least several people around who could probably know CPR pretty well, but most people aren't doctors, and so they don't have that. But the lifeguards at least are CPR trained as well. But I encourage everyone to get CPR trained. You're CPR trained?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think everybody who has a child should, one great place to go is the Red Cross. and anybody can go sign up for CPR certification. You can get certified in EpiPen. You can get certified in a bunch of different things, just so that you know how to deal in a crisis situation. If someone, has an incident, or there's a drowning or a choking or anything, everyone who's an adult or responsible for themselves or someone else should be certified and knowledgeable in this. And it's very easy to do and sign up. So I would encourage everybody to do that. Absolutely.
Everyone should do it.
Yeah.
So, and then the last thing I wanted to talk about was the idea of shallow water blackouts. And when we had the video of Alexi swimming with Corrie, we talked about this a little bit. And so basically, it's this whole concept, and I hear it all the time at pools. If you ever go like to the Y or all these large local pools where kids are, and they'll have contests. Let's hold our breath. So you can hold our breath the longest. Actually, not a great idea. I mean, because it turns out, some people can black out from that. And the problem is that if you black out in water, you actually just drown. I mean, unless someone gets to you quickly. I mean, the drowning death process is a few minutes. But the initial part can be, quite quick. And so people who drown sink initially. Days later, they float. But they sink initially. And that's why they always say they found a child located unresponsive or an adult at the bottom of the pool. So they actually sink down and they just kind of sink kind of straight down. And so shallow water blackouts, people who like to try to swim all the way across the pool, hold the breath the whole time, especially at the end of like a log swimming when you're tired, it really at that point is just a very kind of bad idea. So I discourage it.
Right.
I don't personally do it myself.
Right.
And every time I'm at different swim groups and they like to have us hold our breath the whole time, I kind of chuckle and then I breathe up every stroke.
Do your own thing.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, I kind of do my own thing because I know it's not probably the best idea and I'm kind of tired anyway. The other thing is floaties, we talked about, are very non-protective. We talked about the buddy system. We talked about having eyes on your child at all time. Having a lifeguard is obviously a great idea too, but it still would have your personal eyes. We talked about life jackets, we talked about CPR, and then finally swim skills. And so I wanted to ask Corrie, what your thoughts are on the youngest age a child should be, like a parent should bring a child for initial swim safety stuff.
Sure. Honestly, every child is different. Everybody is their own different person, so it does vary upon the child. I'd say get your child in and around water at an early age. You're bathing them, every day. So that's exposure to water. But, starting even at 6 months, as early as 6 months, you can bring them to the pool. No, you should never just throw them in, okay?
Yeah,
and that is a big key thing. Never just throw your child of 6 months or 1 year or, however young into the pool. You have to establish an area of positivity and safety and happy with the water. So those kind of things are very important. But bring them into the water. Get them used to moving and touching the water. You can have them start lessons at that age. I believe, their gross motor skills don't really start to set in for kids until about, 3 to 4 years old is when they can really start swimming the strokes.
Right.
But sometimes I've seen it happen earlier. It depends on the child. We can get kids, swimming laps. Sometimes if their motor skills are really up there and advanced, they can start swimming at, 2.5 and 3. Those are a little few and far between.
Yeah.
But it can happen. So, like I said, it is dependent on the ability and the skills of the child. But I would definitely get your child in there, and in the pool.
And I would say by age 1, if they haven't, then I think it's a really good idea. And when Alexi was little, we did the Mommy and Me swim class.
I think those are fabulous.
That was fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a bit corny, and we blew bubbles, and we did all these things, but it was a good way for us to bond together.
It's great.
And then, by the end of that, session, that however many weeks it was, she could go through the ring, and she was comfortable, briefly holding her breath underwater and not freaking out, and where she would jump in off the pool and stuff. And so she never was, quote unquote, afraid to learn to swim, and I think that's important.
It's very important.
Yeah, because most adults who don't know how to swim, they're pretty much deathly afraid of the water because they realize, because they never learned any sort of balancing or floating technique.
Or there was a trauma that happened to them. Maybe they were pushed in. Maybe they were overly encouraged to get in beyond what they were ready to do, and that's what kind of causes the anxiety and sets it in, and then they held off from swimming for a while. So you want to be able to encourage the child or the person that's learning how to swim, but don't push them too far. Let them go at their pace. And usually their pace is if you let people go at their pace, it's usually pretty quick, is what I've found. So, but yeah, no pushing them in. Bubbles, mommy and me classes are really, really good. And just getting them comfortable in and around water, and the warmer temperatures work. So know if you go to a pool that's really cold with young ones, sometimes that can also set them off, so temperature can be a factor as well.
Yeah, the cold pools don't work for me either.
No, not even for adults. So I mean, why should we put our kids in cold water? So
People do it though.
They do it, and they expect amazing results, and that usually, doesn't work very well.
Their lips are blue. It's too cold.
It's not good.
It's too cold. Okay, and then as we reiterated before, boats or open water life jackets probably pretty much for everyone.
Everybody.
So anyway, all right. Well, thank you, Corrie, for joining us. We
Thank
had
you for
fun
having
this
me.
morning. We had been in our beach attire, pretty much our swimming attire.
Yes.
This is great.
The best attire.
If you ever want to know what we look like when we're not in the office, this is pretty much it. So we're always at the pool, it seems. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.